And one of the interesting things about it is all three of them produced better results on the recent RICAS, Rhode Island testings than the small schools did.
Mm-hmm.
So there's evidence, now I wouldn't say that's proof positive, but that's certainly strong evidence that this thing of regionalization it works. And then of course I think we all recognize that Massachusetts has done a really good job with the education, and they have a robust regionalization program that is just, sometimes it's just something that you marvel at how they've done that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they've done it is because they recognize that schools of 500, 600, 700 kids simply don't offer what needs to be offered if you're going to have the kids have an opportunity to move on to careers directly out of high school or even to college. So I think it's a recognition that this is not rocket science. It's difficult, but not impossible, and it's not something that is unknown. It's a common thing to combine. I was discussing this the other day with a newly arrived resident in Middletown, and they had been living in Texas, and the comment was that Rhode Island has more school districts than the state of Texas. And if you think about that for a minute, you think, holy cow. So we're so fragmented in our state that it makes it very difficult to, sometimes for us to even conceive of simplifying and regionalizing. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is to bring to the citizens of Newport and Middletown the data that would allow them to make decisions, informed decisions on their own. And I think that's really the core of our work.
So you've both alluded to this. In Middletown, we have visited this topic before. Yeah. Several years ago, this came before the voters, and town council and others are saying, we've already looked at this. Things have changed. What are a couple of critical things that have changed both in our community and on the state level, in your opinion, that make it important to look at school regionalization again? Either one?
I think
both?
When you look at the path we're on, what we're doing today is financially unsustainable. Our schools are failing our students. We have an aging population, and our school enrollments are declining. We on this island at one time we had one high school. And I talk to a lot of people who say, well, we don't want a big school. Well, if you combine Middletown and Newport, you'd have 1,200 students. At one time, Middletown had 1,200 students. So when people say that I don't want a big school, they had a big school. And 1,200 students is not a big school. But Barbara Von Villis, who is a councilwoman who voted for this, has a PhD in education, has been a school teacher, is a college professor, and has more educational background than every town councilor and school committee member combined, has been trying to get our schools to unify for years. And when you have an educator with that kind of experience, and the fact that what we're doing is unsustainable, it's very clear, if you use common sense, that the path has got to be unification.
Sure.
I think one of the things too that has changed is the state's incentives for new construction offer significant advantages for regionalization. In the case of if we just regionalize the high schools, it's some 50% would be the reimbursement from the state. So that would mean if the new school was, if a regional high school was built, for example, we would pay only about half of the cost of that school. If you regionalize the entire, the two school systems, districts, you would achieve something like 80% of the cost of new construction would be reimbursed by the state. Those kinds of incentives didn't exist before. Right. And I think that says that, I mean, I've heard the objections. I think one of the Middletown councilors said, well, you never know that those things will be changed. Well, that's true. Things do change. But I see no reason to believe that the state is going to withdraw those some form of incentive. I think we're going to see those incentives stay for quite some time, because if you're going to improve the educational performance of Rhode Island, which is not exactly something to be writing home about, it's going to require regionalization. It's just that, it's that straightforward. And I don't know that we can in any way say that we're going to do just as well with these tiny high schools. In some ways, I often say that it assaults my common sense that we would end up with two high schools with 500 to 600 students within less than 10 miles of each other. That just does not make a lot of sense. We understand, and we often discuss the difficulties. I mentioned some of the things that you'd have to consider, but you also often hear things that people object, say, well, we don't want to have to take on the problems of Newport, or I suppose it's vice versa as well. I just find that to be less than compelling. Surely our leadership in our schools and so forth can handle whatever kinds of problems that would be, quote, created by regionalization.
So academic benefits,
yeah,
financial benefits, and then generally speaking, what happens to a community when it has a state-of-the-art high school? Every citizen benefits. Students are more well prepared. People coming into the community feel this is a place that they want to live, that they want their children to go to school. So there are immediate benefits, and then there are benefits over the long term. We've talked about that, and the fact that combining the two schools, our educators talk about this, would offer us the opportunity for a comprehensive curriculum, which we don't have in two smaller schools, offering a full selection of courses. We talk about meaningful electives, the career component, which is vast and different for every student. So the benefits are there. I think the study's important. So if you were to, let me just ask quickly, if you were to go to a CESU meeting, would you say that the people attending are necessarily pro or con school unification? What are your thoughts on that?
When I first started going to those meetings, most of the people there were more interested in getting the information.
Right.
And they weren't necessarily pro or con. Most of them were outraged at the town council for putting up the roadblocks and not having the discussion, and that's why they became involved. But after meeting the forum with the regional high schools and all the information that has been put out on our website and all the studies, it's very clear. If you take time to look at the data and have an open mind, that all the data points to unification is the right thing to do.
But I think that Greg makes a good point here, that we're not, there's no litmus test here to be part of the organization or to attend our meetings, because what we're talking about now, right now, we're in very prosaic territory. We're just simply trying to organize which events, where we're going to have these petitions. And we have a variety of locations, shuttles, stop and shop, so forth, where we try to talk to people and say, are you interested in this petition? And the focus is generally on, we're trying to get this before the voters so they'll have information so they can make an informed decision. That's the crux of our message. I suppose that as you can hear it, I've come to the conclusion that this is something that we need to be doing. I think one of the things that's kind of interesting to me is that the more the more likely you are to have lived around other parts of the country, the more likely you are to be in favor of regionalization.
Sure.
I think it's because so many of us are familiar with school systems out throughout the country which have very robust regionalized school systems. It's not a dangerous thing. I think that I often, when I'm talking to people about it and they're not convinced, it usually boils down to, and I don't want to generalize too much on this, but to personal experiences with a school that they didn't care for, or with a particular series of events that didn't meet their expectations. But I don't think that for those of us, as I've said, who lived all over the country, that is that we just realize that this is not something that is scary nor disastrous. It's just something that is more common than not.
Right.
I just find it very difficult sometimes to deal with, well, we can't do this because it's going to not allow the individual instruction or attention to my child, my student, that I would like to see. I think there we have to make a distinction between the number of students in a class size and the size of the school. The size of the school does not necessarily dictate the number of students per teacher. Those are two totally separate issues. I think, we say, I was talking to someone the other day and they said, well, if you look at these, at the very specialized or the small private schools, they do really well. Yes, but they're focused on one thing, and that's college, usually. When you have a student body that has different ambitions, it could be trades, it could be something else, then it could be college, then the regionalization or the bringing together more diversity and so forth has a positive effect.
Sure.
And I think that's something that some recognize more than others. It depends on your own personal experience, I think.
I'm going to just, if you'll bear with me, we're just about needing to wind down.
Okay.
Two points I want to make. One, when we had our recent forum at CCRI and brought together districts that have regionalized, very, very good feedback on parent participation, school climate and culture, good things to hear about the way the school comes together. So I thought that was interesting, and then I really want to take the final couple of minutes here to talk about the petition. 1,200 signatures by April 1st, registered Middletown voters. Where are we? How can people get to us? Because when I get to the library, I have people waiting to sign the petition. So CESU.news, please check our website. It's got everything on it. And then what are some of the other things that we're doing? Are we door to door? Are we out in the community? How can people sign the petition to make their feelings known about wanting more information on this topic?
If they go to our website, they can leave us an email or a message.
Yep.
We will contact them via email and exchange numbers. If they want to volunteer to help us get petitions signed.
Volunteer jobs, yep.
That's wonderful. We want to get people involved. This is democracy in action. For a town council to silence us